Hey everyone, and welcome to the latest live episode of the COVID-19 series being put on, especially here in the New Zealand Health and Safety Professionals Facebook group. Today, I'm really lucky to be joined by Jen Dransfield, who I've known for a number of years now, who is currently being kept very busy as a health and safety advisor at Naylor. So welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's my pleasure. So how are you, mate? How's it going?
I am doing very well. Things have been pretty hectic the last few weeks, but now we've got some people back to work, so it's really in their hands, and we're here to support them. So yeah.
Awesome. So am I right in think? Well, actually, before I delve too much into what you've been up to recently, I would love to just give you a chance just to let us know a little bit about who Jen is, what your background is in health and safety, and perhaps beyond as well. So yeah, maybe give us a spiel.
Sure. No worries. So I was thinking about this last night actually, and it dawned on me that my career in health and safety began about a decade ago now. So the first project I ever worked on was the Inter-Island HVDC Pole 3 project, which was a really large project local to my local little town I lived in down south. That was my ticket out of small town New Zealand. I went on to work for Siemens International and Mainzel up here in Christchurch. And after that, I moved to contract construction, where I was H&S manager for about 4 years. Then I took a bit of a career sidestep and went and worked for the Safe Rebuild Initiative, which was a government union business tripartite, which was a really, really cool experience. I've done a couple of years consulting, and then moved on to my current position at Naylor.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. That's a great bio. Lots of different experiences there too. Gosh, I mean, it makes me realize how long I've known you actually. Just sort of watching you through your career progression as well. The Canterbury rebuild project was such a neat one as well. I loved how so many different groups were coming together to try and get important messages out to those on the front lines. Really, big project. So, I mean, definitely we'll pick your brains around some of those experiences from the past, and then obviously in the last few weeks, COVID-19 really kicked in here in New Zealand. Level 4 just was really kind of sprung on us really within a very short space of time. And I'm right in thinking that some of the key projects for Naylor Love continued working under Level 4. Is that right? Yeah.
So we had a couple of projects here in Christchurch that continued because they were deemed essential projects. So that was a whole new world for us, really. Lots of these things haven't been done before. So it's been a really unique experience, actually.
I can imagine. Can imagine. So in terms of the Level 4 response, was it really just a case of all hands on deck and trying to get some key messages out to the teams, or?
Yep, absolutely. And the biggest driver for us really was that because this hasn't been, we haven't had to deal with this type of thing before. It was really just about taking, what information do we have? What is the Ministry of Health telling us? What is industry telling us? What is government telling us? All of this sort of information, and taking that and trying to ensure that we were doing the right thing. And so the project teams for those jobs actually led that process for us. They took all that information and created a plan. They developed a plan for themselves and for their workers, with their workers, to implement all these things, Awesome. So they were the real drivers for this. Obviously it was overseen by senior management and whatnot, but
what a great approach. So basically you're giving the tools and information to those on the ground that needed it most, and then allowing them the space to come up with the solutions themselves. Nice.
Absolutely.
And then, so from during that period, was anything kind of more formalized? Was it like some of the stuff's working and it's working really well, let's try and make this go across the organization there?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a, I don't want to say guinea pig, but the
Mm.
processes out there, it was good to see what worked and what didn't. And
Yeah.
what was really important for the guys on those projects too, for the guys actually on the ground, was that they felt comfortable enough to raise issues or say, hey, we could do this thing differently, or what about this, and taking their ideas as well. For example, on one of those jobs, some of the guys came and said to the project management team, look, we'd really love to be able to get fully changed out of our work clothes before we go home. And so what they did was took one of their side offices and basically just knocked up a bunch of ply walls so that the guys had some changing rooms so that they could get changed before they return home to their family bubbles. So just really basic things like that, and listening to the guys that were out there doing the work.
Yeah, that's so neat. And I guess some pretty hefty steps beyond purely just providing hand sanitizer or sticking up a couple of posters. You're actually really listening to what the guys need, particularly around getting changed from work life to home life, because that's one of my fears really at the moment, is that I'm seeing a lot of pictures and posts on social media from the smaller construction companies who just seem to think that they've ticked the box purely by just setting up a sign-in station at the front of their properties. But I'm just like, oh my gosh, what kind of systems are behind that? Probably not many. So it's neat to hear that. So in terms of the success and the level of buy-in from the various work bubbles within those construction sites, do you get a sense that the level of buy-in's been good?
Yeah, I think we've been really fortunate within our organisation that we have got quite a good embedded culture already. So that has made this whole situation a lot easier, because our people want to do the right thing. They want to be at work if they can, and if it's safe to do that. And, we know what the expectations are. So it has been, we have been really fortunate in that sense to have that there. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And then are you aware, or did you have any input in yourself in regards to the construction guidance material that's been coming out? Has Naylor's had much of an input on that?
Yeah. So our CEO, Rick Hurd, is on the board for HASANZ. And so we got filtered down a lot of documents and things for feedback, to share ideas and actually take some of the learnings we already had from those essential projects that we had running, to be able to use that to assist with providing feedback for those documents. So it really was a sort of an all hands on deck type of situation, and pumping out that information and providing feedback and whatnot to try and contribute to what things might look like going forward, really. So that was really cool to be able to have some for us to be able to have some direct input into the what those documents look like now.
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, personally, I think the material that has come out has been extremely useful and quite intuitively easy to refer to, which has been really helpful. And then, so are your sites, do you feel that some of those projects that continued operating during level 4 are now being seen as kind of living, breathing examples of how it can be done?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I think when we were approached to do this essential work, or it was classed as essential work, first and foremost, from the outset, it really was about this. If ever there was a time to have safety before productivity and program, it's now. And so, it's been an interesting experience, but it's really shaped how we've done things in level 3 as well. Because in all reality, there isn't much difference between what level 4 and level 3 look like, and we knew that was going to be the case. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's just really interesting times, incredibly unique times, I suppose. And then, so in terms of the controls that have been put in place, have you tried to avoid the everyone must wear squillion items of PPE and continuously replace them and all of that? Because again, I've seen that a lot in social media, where there's a lot of construction firms that just seem to think we'll just throw lots of face masks at people and sanitizer, and that will make the problem go away. I'm assuming it's been quite a lot of consideration in terms of the availability of PPE and whether it's even suitable to be distributing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with regards to PPE and face masks and whatnot, the guidance that we have has been pretty clear in that the jury was kind of out on whether face masks were really providing much protection for workers who are out and about. So we kind of avoided going there, and just have tried to manage things in different ways through staggered work, staggered work zones, staggered shifts, and just day-to-day dealings as well, reducing touch points, all of those sorts of things. When we came into level 3, or we were looking at coming into level 3, we had developed an internal template for level 3 works. And all of our projects that are operating in level 3 have applied that template, which was designed to be broad enough that it could be used on a whole range of sites, because of course every site is different. Every site requires a bespoke plan, and it's been really, really interesting seeing some of the innovation and the ideas that the guys and girls out there have come up with for their particular sites.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna poke now and say, can you think of any examples? Because it'd be really interesting to hear of that.
Okay, so I actually had to take some notes last night because I knew that this was going to come up. So for example, we have with regards to sign-in, of course, we have a requirements for what information is taken for contact tracing and all that sort of thing. We have some sites that have got very few workers on them, so they're going old school and just doing a manual sign-in with the site foreman or whoever in the morning or during the day. We also have some sites with more workers on them where they have themselves created like a big board, and on that board it's got the entire site layout, and they have a list of all of the work crews and those individual people's names, and they tack them onto the board where they are, and then they take a photo of that every day so that they have a record of who was where on what day and their phone numbers and all those sorts of things. Even as far as utilising Who's on Location, which is a sign-in program app that we also have within our organisation, where some of our sites are geo-fenced. So if some workers download the app, then they don't actually have to touch anything or sign anything to sign in at all, because awesome. They're love that. Also, other real basic things too. Things don't necessarily have to be complex. Really simple things like I had some guys, one of the guys stick his hand up and say, oh, well, we need to manage our tools, right? So where we're putting our personal tools down and making sure that other people aren't handling those and what have you. And then another bloke pipes up and says, well, we've got a bunch of wheelbarrows on the site. What if each of the chippies just takes a wheelbarrow, and that's his wheelbarrow, and that's where he puts all his gear for the day? So really, really simple things like that. And it's like, yep, absolutely, go for it.
I love that. It's so far removed from the traditional or the classic mistake of allowing someone in the office to come up with all of the controls and plans, right? Because no one's ever going to think of, let's use wheelbarrows. How neat. That's so cool.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. There's been a lot of things like that, instead of having 3 blokes in a crew and they all share 1 or 2 boxes of fixings, well, let's just give them all their own box of fixings, and then they don't have a bunch of different hands going in there all day during the work shift. Things like that.
Really clever. I have seen some discussion and pretty heated debate actually around whether um, workers on construction sites should be able to leave site for lunch and smoko breaks to go to the local dairy or to the local fast food place to get lunches. Has there been much thought around what kind of messaging or what kind of systems are being put in place to manage that type of thing?
Yeah, so we have included some thought around that in our inductions for where we're re-inducting workers. Obviously, excuse me, smoko rooms and things like that are becoming a lot trickier. We have restrictions with those with regards to microwaves and all that sort of thing. And I guess it it really is a lot about educating workers as well, because the construction accord that we have, it has a specific clause in there that talks about we need to talk to workers about what they should be doing when they leave site and go home, and go back into their communities and go back and what that might look like in a practical sense. So even just basic things like each time you come into site, wash your hands. Every time you leave, wash your hands. Maintain that distance, and just be aware of your surroundings. Respect the people that are around you and other people in the community.
Yeah, yeah. And then this is something that hasn't really been mentioned or discussed too much that I've seen. Is just around, is there much thought or planning if someone is suspected of being unwell and potentially, symptomatic of COVID-19? Is there much in place at the moment to manage events like that?
Yep, absolutely. So with regards to contact tracing and things like that, we have got several processes in place that are sort of standard processes where if some of what project management teams need to do if someone feels unwell while they're at work. And that generally looks a little bit like, standing down immediate work crews, seeking advice from the Ministry of Health and things like that, being able to provide any information to them that's requested of us. And of course, some of those things, those stand-down type things are managed through work zoning and grouping teams and things like that. Yeah. So there's a whole list of what to do, but we were pretty set on making sure that those list of procedures were fairly concise and very clear. Sort of no mucking around. Anyone could read it and understand what they need to do in that type of situation.
Yeah, awesome, love it. And then obviously one of the big challenges right now is to try and maintain that minimum of 1 meter distance when working within your identified bubble within that construction environment. Are you seeing evidence of that working well, or is it still quite a challenge, do you think?
I think that there are always going to be challenges, but it really comes down to just really driving it home to the workers that we've got on site. Look, if you find yourself in a situation where you need to, don't. It can wait. Essentially, our rule of thumb is that within Naylor Love internally, is that if you have to complete a task within a meter of another individual, you just don't. You can't. One of the first things that I asked the project management teams for the jobs that I oversee was to take their programs for sort of the next 2 to 4 weeks and identify as best as possible every single task that every subtrade and every carpenter may have to do that requires them to be within a meter of another person. So by identifying those things, we could kind of look at them and go, all right, is there an alternative? Can it wait? Stuff like that. Like, can it wait for a few weeks? And also there's other things around managing people movement as well. For example, we have one project which is a really large 2-story retirement facility with apartments and things like that up in Nelson, and they've got guys working fitting out the apartment rooms, and they've
Yep.
also got really large corridors that need plastered and painted. So they're going, okay, well, we can't have both happening at the same time because we can't maintain that distance of people working within the corridor and also having to move around and things like that.
Yep.
So that came down to, okay, well, you know, let's start the guys doing the painting and the plastering at 4 o'clock when the rest of the guys knock off. And they can work through on a later shift, and then the next lot of guys can come in the morning. So there's a lot of coordination and a lot of planning and all those sorts of things. But we have really encouraged our site management teams to have sort of an end of the day catch up, round up, right? What worked, what didn't, what have we got happening tomorrow? Because you know, they really have to plan this as it comes along, and it really is just rolling with the punches. You know.
Yeah. No, I mean, it all sounds great. It sounds very much like kind of the textbook theory being put into practice. It sounds like it's working really, really well. And I think what you're describing is that one of the key reasons why that is because the decisions and the actions are all being driven to those on the floor and on the ground doing the work, which is fantastic. And I guess it's kind of taking me back to your background as well, Jan, because I mean, clearly that's been a big part of your professional development is being in these types of environments and different working spaces. But clearly it's rubbed off, because what you're describing is fab. I mean, is there any gosh, I mean, I'm just trying to think for the members of this group, for their sake and for their benefit, would there be any particular training or particular experience that you'd recommend to help develop that ability to get messaging to the people that are actually putting things into practice on the ground?
Oh, particular training. I'm not. I don't know that I could pinpoint a particular type of training, but I think engaging in as much face-to-face humanized discussion as you can, and sort of dipping your toe into different pools of different people is really important. You know, I've been very fortunate in that I have been able to, as I say, dip my toe into lots of different industries. Although I have mainly worked in construction, but you know, I've also worked with union, private business, done training, all sorts of stuff. You know, so it's really those experiences one-on-one, and teaching yourself to be a genuine listener to what people have to say, you know, and what they've got to say. One of the easiest ways, though, to assist with kicking off behavioural change for frontline workers, I have always found, is getting them all together and ask them directly what is really grinding their gears. Because once one person says something, generally the floodgates open, and you know, they will tell you just about anything, and you can then take those things and figure out exactly why they are that way, and work with those people to resolve them, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it's reminding me of I had a big project once where I was doing a series of training sessions across numerous places of work around New Zealand and overseas, and I came back with a big long raft of recommendations and improvements, which I wasn't actually tasked to do. I was there purely to just do training, to tell the guys how it was going to be. But I ended up just getting so much information purely by asking the questions: how's it going? What's working? What's not? It's amazing. Just having those open-ended questions can really help identify a lot of unrecognized problems and issues, which it's really, really powerful stuff. Yeah, great advice. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's just being open to conversations and honing the skills of being a good listener. I think it's something that perhaps our industry is only really just starting to get to grips with now. I think we still have that the history or the legacy of being there to tell people how to do their work and how to stay safe and all of that, which just switches everyone off so quickly. It's really refreshing and clearly working, which is awesome. It's really, really exciting.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not I'm not a carpenter. I'm not a plumber. You know, I've done work in manufacturing and all those sorts of things. I'm not a machinist. All I can do is try and ask people the right questions to get the right information out of them, so that you can help them find solutions to the challenges that they're having in their workplace. You know.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, I love that. It's really refreshing to hear, and again from personal experiences of turning up to large training sessions and morning toolbox talks to address a crowd and say, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not the expert, you are. It really does develop that sense of buy-in and trust with the crew, which is awesome. It's so cool. Yeah. So I guess it's probably hard to predict what the immediate few weeks and months ahead is going to look like. Has there been much work done on you know, the progression into level 2s and level 1s at this point?
I think, as I said earlier, it really is just about sort of rolling with the punches at the moment. And you know, we kind of get day to day a little bit more clarity around what things might look like. So yeah, it's quite a tricky question to answer, to be honest, because we're still learning, and we're still getting bits and pieces of information. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure what it's going to look like in level 2, to be honest. And even if we do have a significant amount of restrictions lifted, it will be interesting to see whether our workers continue to carry on the habits that they've formed within the last sort of few weeks, you know, anyways, just out of habit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm equally interested to see that too, even in a social aspect. Is will we naturally go back to the Kiwi way of hugs and, you know, high fives, or will we all be cautiously keeping our distance? It's going to be very interesting.
Elbow tapping, or yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I can't get my head around that whole elbow tapping thing.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of advice around coughing into your elbow and sneezing into your elbow as well. So
true. Good point.
I don't know.
And then so on more of a individual point of view, Jan, I mean, in terms of your own professional development and training, what types of high level training have you done? Because I'm pretty sure that the last time we spoke, I was kind of quietly blown away by how much of the training you have done. So what kind of things have you done in the last 10 years?
Yeah, so I guess the bulk of my training has been more technical training. I try to understand things as thoroughly as possible. So I've done all sorts of courses from all over the place. Primarily, I did do NEBOSH initially, and level 3 and level 4, that sort of thing. I'm currently working my way through some other higher level qualifications as well. Awesome. And also taking some papers in business and things like that. Yeah. So, but I mean, it's also really valuable to do, you know, the old day courses and things like that. You know, I've done a few years ago. I did drug and alcohol testing. You know, and the reason that I did that course, for example, was not so that I could do drug and alcohol testing. It was because I wanted to understand the entire process from start to finish, so that when I have workers ask me about that process or what it looks like or what it means, I could actually explain it to them in a way that they could understand. So all those sorts of things are really valuable, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, a really nice mode of thinking. You know, you actually kind of the decision to do that was purely on the fact of the end user, right? So what their experiences are going to be like. It's not much use if they're coming to you asking those types of questions and you don't really know what the process is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I don't know the answer to something, I won't lie about it. I'll just say I really can't answer that, but I'll find out. I'll find out for you, and I'll get back to you. You know.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I love it. No, that's cool. And then in terms of life in your bubble and life under level 4 and level 3, how's it all been for you? You kind of coping with the isolation?
Yeah, I've actually been in a pretty good mindset. Yeah, I've
Good.
been pretty fortunate. It's been really hectic
Hmm.
and really up and down, but I guess, on the first day of lockdown, I kind of had this little epiphany where I sort of thought to myself, oh my goodness, if I don't make a conscious effort to keep my mind
Mm.
in a good space, I'm probably going to spiral, just spiral down the rabbit hole. So I kind of figured from day one that I had to keep myself productive,
Hmm.
and whether that was through work or doing other bits and pieces, and
Yeah.
really just maintaining connectedness as well with other people,
Mm.
and with other workers and things like that,
Yeah.
and um, understanding what's going on for other people and allowing them the space to be able to talk to you about
Mm.
what's going on for them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's awesome. It's probably a kind of a nice transition into kind of the mental health and well-being. So I suspect we'll probably actually almost like the good old Christchurch earthquake experiences that we all had. We were in that initial emergency period for a few weeks where we were just trying to get our heads around what was going on and the
Mm-hmm.
recovery, and then suddenly we started to see the real emotional human effects of that event. And we're probably going to start to see the same
Mm-hmm.
across New Zealand from the level 4 as well. So it's probably something that we all within our health and safety advisory roles are going to have to be really aware of, and probably need to be
Absolutely.
taking care of ourselves too as well, just to make sure that we're in a good state to actually be able to assist. It's going to be really important.
Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I kind of have really been thinking a lot about recently is, we have always known about the relationship between people's home life and
Mm.
work life, but now it's really been put right in our faces that we have to be talking to our workers. We haven't had any option but to talk to our workers on individual basis as people,
Mm.
um, to understand what their personal situations are at the moment. We've
Yeah.
had workers who say, for example, were contacted to ask them if they wanted to come and do some work on some of our project sites during level 4, and they've
Mm.
said, you know what, we've actually had grandma and granddad move in during this
Mm.
isolation time, or my son is a asthmatic, or we've got a new baby at home, or whatever, um, and so they sort of prefer not to be out there doing that sort of thing. So it's really humanized a lot of it, because it's something that affects everyone.
Mm.
It's not like what we like to think of standard critical risks on construction sites and lots of workplaces where certain risks only affect certain people. This affects everyone, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
So it's really drawn a lot of that out for a lot of businesses, I think,
Yeah.
understanding people's personal situations
Mm-hmm.
and maintaining that connectedness with those people as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think it's brought the people aspect right to the fore,
Mm-hmm.
where our human resources, health and safety, our business continuity, maturity levels have been really tested. And I
Mm-hmm.
really like to think that actually in the foreseeable, when things really start to settle and we start to hopefully get back to some sense of normality, we will, as a country, as an industry, really start to refine and increase our maturity levels in those areas. I think we're already starting to see signs of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and also utilizing technology like this. I mean, this is so neat to be able to do this today and to be able to hopefully give our community a sense that we are all in this together. And you may be
Mm-hmm.
working in isolation at the moment, but be sure that there's many of us feeling the same and going through the same pain points as
Oh,
as you are.
absolutely.
Mm.
I was just thinking yesterday, it seems like forever ago that you and I were sitting in the C1 coffee shop, and you were saying to me, I've got this idea for this group.
That's right.
And, where no question's a stupid question, and
Yeah.
we can just share information and all that sort of thing. It
Mm.
seems like forever ago, and look where
Yeah.
we are
I
now.
know. Nuts, isn't
Um,
it? Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
I think
sorry,
I
go on.
was just going to say, I feel like, the more we all talk to each other, the more we figure out that a lot of us are actually in the same boat.
Yeah.
Being in this profession can feel extremely isolating,
Mm,
especially when, because the nature of this profession is that a lot of organizations only have one safety person.
hmm
Um, and so you don't always have that opportunity to bounce ideas off other people, or hey, I'm
mm,
thinking about this, what do you reckon, or
yeah,
you often don't have that sort of um, day-to-day validation of what you're doing, and
mm,
people just sort of either that's the safety person's job, or they don't have as much interest in delving into what
mm,
you're doing. But when you have the opportunity to do things like this, and communities where you can talk to other people who are also working in the profession, whether it's just for a rant, or you want to be able to talk in safety acronyms with someone who understands, it's really valuable. It's extremely valuable, and um, I I would really struggle if I didn't have that.
yeah, yeah. Look, I absolutely agree. I think that's why we gravitated to doing, crazy
Mm-hmm.
things like setting up health and safety groups online. But
Yeah.
yeah, it has been quite a journey, and I'm really really grateful for everyone who's contributed to it. To date, it's been incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And you reminded me, I'm really looking forward to a good catch up at C1 over a coffee sometime soon. Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
um,
Yeah.
and then probably the last thing I wanted to just quickly chat about is there's one or two of us in the background that are talking about our concerns for those in the health and safety world that perhaps may have been made redundant as a result of recent events, or maybe struggling to find employment because everyone's in mad scramble mode. Is that perhaps we could use the NZHSP Facebook group as a platform to help try and find individuals new roles, or to at least get them some perhaps just task by task work, just to tide them
Mm-hmm.
over. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
something we're playing with. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's I think, look, if the platform's there, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember it very vividly. I worked for Mainzeal when they went into receivership,
Mm.
and it was sort of like everyone lost their jobs overnight, and it was extremely unpleasant. And I would not wish that situation on my worst enemy.
Mm.
Um, but one thing that did happen was that we were lucky that we were in the thick of the rebuild.
Yeah.
But also, one thing that happened was we had this explosion of Facebook connections between everyone that had worked together in the company. And so,
Mm.
what happened was where a site manager might go for a job interview somewhere, and they mention that they also need a QS or a safety person or whatever. And
Yeah.
so then they would say, hey, such and such is looking for a QS, you should give them a call. And so it was this whole new little community. So
Mm.
I think if we've got the platform here to be able to share that type of information, then
Mm.
why not?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I knew you'd like it. Yeah, thank you. that's I got the seal
Absolutely.
of approval. Yes, that's awesome. Yeah, because yeah, I guess it's going to just continue to be an interesting period for us, and we just use the tools that we've got available. That's awesome. Gosh, this
Yeah.
has been so much valuable insight. Thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah. No
thoughts and
worries.
experiences. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
So, what's the rest of the day shaping up for you? Is it back to it?
Yeah. I've had a little bit of a crazy day today. I'm doing some work with the Cathedral Reinstatement Project at the moment.
Mm,
So
yeah,
doing a bit of work in the background on that, which is really awesome.
yeah,
And there's always something that needs done, isn't there? So
yes,
whether
yeah,
it's a document development or
hmm
what have you, in that
yeah,
downtime, there's always the things that you put on the back burner,
yeah,
um, between fighting fires and things like that. So
mm, yeah,
so yeah.
But enough to keep you out of trouble anyway. That's the main thing.
Oh, absolutely. And actually just checking in with all of the guys on our sites as well,
Yep.
just doing ring arounds and saying, hey, have you run into any teething problems yet?
Yeah.
Is there anything that's not working out that needs changed, or that you have changed, or anything like that? I think at the moment it really is just about businesses remaining dynamic to the situation and what's happening in the environment, and the advice and the guidance that we're being given, and being able to take the information and the skills and the knowledge that we have, and using that, to do the best that we can, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's all we can do, right? No, it's just doing what we can, and knowing when perhaps our knowledge or skills are being pushed to the limits. That's when we'll just go, we'll go back and find out a wee bit more for you before committing to anything. It's,
absolutely.
All good messaging.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Jen, look, I've managed to capture you for 40 minutes plus, which has just been really awesome. This has been a great interview. Thank you so much for your insight.
Yeah, no worries.
And I very much look forward to catching up with you sometime soon over a coffee. Fingers crossed. And just keep on doing what you're doing, mate. It's really very inspiring stuff. So awesome.
Yeah, no worries. I do need to acknowledge too that we do have a fantastic team of health and safety people at Naylor, and collectively it really has been all hands on deck, and it's been really fantastic. So it's not just me; it's a whole group of us, and all of the guys on the sites as well. And I actually want to thank you, Matt, too, for all of your work and facilitating all of these interviews and the information you've been putting out there as well. You've put a huge amount of work into all of this, and it's just been fantastic, really fantastic. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Cool. No worries.
All right. I'll end there before you start saying anything too silly.
Yeah, no worries.
That's great. All right, mate. Well, take care, and we'll see you soon.